Components of detox. So it's very simple. The primary components of detox consist, first of all, of hydration. Now, in this seminar, I don't have enough time to go through the whole water discussion. I do have a whole chapter on hydration on the website, very cleverly titled Water, and at the end of it there's a whole section on fluoride. But in general, we are dehydrated. The water that you drink in the 5 cups of coffee every day does not count. For every cup of coffee you drink, you are losing 2 cups of metabolic water. Between 1 and 2 liters during a detoxification, between 1 and 2 liters of water is optimum. If you're not used to drinking that much water, it will take you a couple weeks to get up to that because your body just is not used to accepting all that water. On my consult form, one of the items on that 3-page questionnaire the patient must fill out, it says, how much water do you drink every day? How much water do you drink every day? And you won't believe the answers that people write, like not much, or it'll say 1 cup. So many of our problems, especially chronic illnesses and chronic diseases, can be solved, if not vastly ameliorated, just by drinking some water, okay? At least 1 liter a day, and if you're detoxing, try to get that up to as close to 2 liters as possible. So read the water chapter when you get a chance. Okay, diet. As we clear out the tract, as we clear out the blood, we're only going to be adding enzyme-rich foods to nourish you during the detox program. We're going to go over that in detail. Clear the tract and clear the blood. That's the way I was trained. Now here's another one of these primers for holistic nutrition. If you're really interested in this field, here is one of your early little Bibles. It's real easy to read. You know who this guy was, right? Weston A. Price was the dentist. And in the 1930s, he and his wife went around the world for 3 years, and he was looking for what? He was looking for the healthiest people. Exactly, the healthiest people on earth. And here's how he evaluated. The healthiest people on earth were not only those who had the longest life overall, but who had the longest life pain-free with no degenerative diseases. And also they had strong bones, no evidence of osteoporosis. It was a very thorough study. It's your note number 45. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Some of these slides will have a number in brackets. You go to my homepage on my website and you'll see a little button and it will say Notes Seminars. You click on that button and you scroll down to the Live Nutrition Seminar, and that's what these notes refer to. He finally noticed, Weston A. Price finally noticed that the people who lived the longest with the most disease-free life, they had certain characteristics in common. All throughout the world, across the world, they had characteristics in common. Here were the common characteristics. They had a mineral-rich water. Glacial milk, he talks about that. You know, if they lived in mountainous areas like Switzerland and the water was so rich with minerals that it would be milky and cloudy, not because it was polluted, it was that mineral rich. That was one characteristic. Fruits and vegetables, the concept of organic wasn't even, they hadn't invented pesticides and herbicides yet. Whole grains, a very important source of B vitamins as well as essential fatty acids. A little meat, fish, and raw dairy, and that's it. So you could spend all kind of money. South beats diet, North beats diet, paleo diet, this diet, that diet. I just saved you a lot of money here. Here's the diet of the healthiest people who have ever lived on this planet. And I'm just really summarizing this. He documents this extremely well in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Yeah. Okay, now my opinion is that There is no legitimate program of detoxification which does not begin with the colon. This is kind of like a criterion how you can separate the professionals from the dilettantes. There is no legitimate program of detoxification which does not begin with the colon. Now here was a guy who really inspired me in this field. 11 years university, I graduated from all that without ever hearing terms like probiotics, mucoid plaque, colon disease. So that was Richard Anderson. After a few years in practice, when I first went into practice, I began to notice something. I began to notice that as these patients come in year after year, and I'm adjusting C7 and T7 every time they come in, and then they feel great, and they go out into the world and they feel great. But as time went by, year after year, they were getting bigger and sicker in spite of the spine being cleared out. And then I began to realize that there are some other influences. There may be some other influences on total health than just having a clear, adjusted spine. I was in my climb every mountain phase at that time. This is in the early 90s, right? And I began to read everything I possibly could on holistic nutrition at that time. It's funny, the harder you work, the luckier you are. But I was guided into the aura and the influence of 4 of the top people in the world in individual areas of study at that time. And one of these was Richard Anderson, the naturopath, the specialist in colon detox. And we're going to talk about that specifically in a minute. I just want to introduce all my early influences. The next guy was Dr. Stan Bynum. The head of the National Enzyme Company back in the 20s was a guy named Edward Howell, MD. I have his book over there. He had a vice president of National Enzyme Company, Dr. Stan Bynum, PhD. And when Edward Howell died in 1988, Bynum took over National Enzyme Company, and he ran that just for a few years, and then he founded his own company in Phoenix, Arizona called Infinity. Now, this was the top expert in enzyme nutrition in the world, was Stan Bynum. I became aware of bioterrain analysis, live cell testing. I took that course in bioterrain analysis with Stan Bynum in the mid-90s, identifying the common imbalances in human blood. And then I was really intrigued by this. I went with Bynum on several occasions. We traveled to the Philippines and we did hundreds of live cell tests in the third world, and we saw, you know what I learned? I learned what the word stress really means in the third world. Stress means you live your life hovering between life and death. That's stress. And people who live like that, their blood has a certain look to it. It looks like hell. It looks really bad. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. So anyway, Bynum taught me so much, but he taught me to think at the cellular level, especially when it comes to supplementation, when it comes to nutrition. The concept of bioavailability. How much of your food is actually being broken down, digested, and actually getting to your cells? Every cell of your body has requirements, just a couple requirements every second of your life, from the moment of birth to the moment of death. What are they? To take in oxygen and nutrients and to expel wastes. To the degree to which the cells of your body are allowed to perform these 2 functions, you will be healthy. And so that was Bynum who inculcated that idea, and that is directly coming from Edward Howell. Does anybody know who this handsome gentleman is? Okay, this is Patrick Flanagan, wonderkind of antioxidants. He invented an antioxidant which has no peer in the world today. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a little while. And finally, this is Kem Shahani, PhD. He was the #1 expert in probiotics in the world. He was the head of University of Nebraska, department, published many times in JAMA and top medical journals. But he taught me about not only the importance, the critical importance of flora, but how they work in the body and why most Americans are deficient in flora and what that really means from an epidemiological standpoint. Okay, the 60-day program, as I said, consists of this simple, common sense diet and then 7 supplements. And these are the 7 supplements. Now, here's the philosophy of Bynum. Stan Bynum taught us this. As far as supplements go, number 1, 95% of the supplements that you see in GNC, in Walgreens, and in the drugstores are manufactured either indirectly or directly by whom?
Pharmaceutical.
Exactly, Dr. Wade has it. The pharmaceutical industry. Their job is to make a beautiful label and to put the cheapest ingredients in those supplements as possible. Spend money on marketing and promotion. Outside of that, there is another category of supplements that are well made. They are valuable. They are nutritionally valid. But we don't really need them on a daily basis for survival. There is another smaller category of that group which we really need for complete cellular nutrition and bioavailability, which we really need to clear the tract and clear the blood. And so Bynum always said, we want people to be spending the least amount of money possible on supplements, to be taking the least number of supplements possible, but still to enable the cells of our body to perform those 2 functions, to have a clear tract and clear arterial system all the time. That's the goal of a legitimate detox program. This is Stan Bynum coming right at you from the grave. That's exactly how he talked. Okay, the tract and the blood. The tract and the blood. Remember how I told you on the website there is there's that section called feedback and testimonials. And it's hundreds of stories over the years. Most of the stories are not even on that list because I didn't have time. Just a few of them. We divided that whole list into vaccine stories, into detox stories, into chiropractic success stories. When you click on that button, feedback and testimony, you're going to get this whole list of hundreds of stories. Here are a couple that I can remember. There was a guy, came into my clinic one time, young man, about 30. He was George Bush's limo driver, Secret Service, but I treated him anyway. Did the bioterrain test on him. He had this red face, and he had these chronic allergies. He was a DEA agent. He had to crawl around down by the border in Arizona and New Mexico for years and developed some kind of sensitivity. He had been to every specialist at Walter Reed, back east, and all the geniuses, giving him every antibiotic and every anti-inflammatory known to man, and it was getting worse. It was getting worse, worse, and worse, and nothing was helping him, and he was going to lose his job. He was going to lose his job with the Secret Service. So in desperation, he came to me. We did this test. His blood looked really bad. The after looked excellent. And I made him give up all these weird ideas of these elimination diets and all these complicated things that he was doing, which were making him worse. Stop all drugs, simplify your diet, hydrate, and do these supplements. That's all he did. After 60 days, he was halfway better. He had to do the 60-day program twice, and he got his life back. He was completely cleared up. What I take away from Sean's story is this. These people with chronic allergies, they come in and they tell you they've had chronic allergies for years. They've been on antibiotics for years. Here's a clue. If antibiotics are going to work for your problem, they work in the first few weeks. If they don't work in the first few weeks, you don't keep on taking them for years. They're immunosuppressive. It's going to be that much more difficult for you to ever reestablish normal homeostasis if you do that. So, That's an easy one. People come into you telling you that they've been on antibiotics for 2 years. You can improve their health 50% by just getting rid of the antibiotics right there. Second one is, there was a lady from Florida. Okay, yeah. Turned out she was the niece of somebody famous. What's this muscle? Yeah, right under that, masseter, right under that, she had developed 3 lumps. And so she had these lumps biopsied, and they were malignant, right? So she did the usual slash and burn, chemotherapy, radiation, the heaviest drugs possible, and 6 months later, they came back and there were 6. Now there's 6. So she went back to the geniuses, and what do you think they wanted to do now? Exactly, Dr. Ralph nailed it. They wanted to do the exact same thing. Now let's see, 3 goes to 6. Oh, well, that's doubling. Okay, so she really didn't want 12 lumps in her jaw, right? So she decided to try something else. And the diet wasn't perfect, but she never heard of any supplements before. And she did this program. And I mean, you know how the cancer industry works, right? Especially with your families, people in your family get cancer. When anybody suggests not following the regimented recommendation, you get all this pressure from the families, and it becomes this big family thing. So it's very difficult for somebody to resist all that and to go the holistic route and let the healing powers of the body actually take over and give you a chance to survive. She went through all that, actually did it. This woman was strong. She knew in the first, she would email me all the time. In the first 2 weeks, she knew, you can feel it, you get this feeling. She knew that she was equilibrating herself. She was calibrating herself, and she was on the right path. That mental attitude is really critical in a healing process like this, especially one like this where you're on the way down. So of course the story goes, in just 60 days, not only did she have no cancer markers, no symptoms of cancer, all her other symptoms were gone, and the lumps were almost completely gone. They had reduced on their own, and then she told me some 6 months later they were completely gone. So that was a very dramatic one, but it's not unusual. It's not unusual. Okay, finally, the last one I'm going to tell you is Dr. Fidel. Dr. Fidel came in. He was a teacher at San Jose City College, I remember. And he came in. He went into Kaiser because he just felt tired, He just felt kind of tired, and he didn't have his normal energy. And he started losing weight. He wasn't really fat or anything, but he just started losing weight. So he went in, and they couldn't find anything specific. They couldn't find any tumors, they couldn't find any lumps, they really couldn't find any cancer markers, but they just said that it seemed like he might have some kind of metaplastic process going on somewhere. It was really vague, and so this is an incredible phrase. They actually used it. I saw it when they recommended to this guy prophylactic chemotherapy. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to give you chemotherapy and Trojans, right? That means they're giving you just in case chemotherapy. Okay? So Dr. Fidel, he was like a professor of English literature or something like that. So he came to me and I explained to him the whole program. And 60 days, he was, ship-shape and Bristol fashion. He was back to his old self. So read some of these other amazing stories in the feedback and testimonials section, but I'm not like a genius. All I'm doing is giving the healing powers of the body, giving them a chance to heal us. We don't always have to do something, and sometimes we have to be patient. It takes time. It takes time for the body to heal itself. I mean, how long did it take for you to deteriorate this bad? How long did it take for these diseases to appear? So we have to be patient, and we have to do the holistic approach for a while before things will improve. We have to be patient. So this is exactly what Tilden was talking about when he said this: all so-called diseases are increasing symptom complexes due to repeated crises of toxemia. That was the name of his book, Toxemia Explained. Tilden's thesis is that there is only one disease, and that is blood poisoning, toxemia. These diseases have no independent existence. See, you know, everybody goes to Kaiser, they go to the geniuses, hoping that they come back with some phrase that they can tell their family. Oh, now I know what's wrong with me. I have restless leg syndrome, or I have chronic fatigue, or I have Lou Gehrig's disease, I have, you know, ALS. You know, they want the phrases. So many of these are blanket diagnoses that are made in 5 minutes that don't really mean anything except as rationales for a drug regimen. Tilden continues, as soon as toxemia is controlled, they disappear, unless an organ has been destroyed. Will you pay a surgeon to cut out the effects of wrong living? So my friend, one of my patients, when I see this slide, I remind of my patients. I went to Asia for a month. I came back, and one of the patients that I've had for a long time comes back in and said, oh, while you were gone, I had stomach pain, so they cut out 2/3 of my colon. Will you pay a surgeon to cut out the effects of wrong living? Now, another friend of mine, he's actually a chiropractor. This guy, what do they call it? What do they call it when if you're overweight, they do the gastric bypass, right? It's like they bypass your stomach. So it goes from your esophagus to your small intestine. And that's going to diminish your appetite, you know, and he's perfectly happy. So will you pay a surgeon to cut out the effects of wrong living? This is deteriorated thinking. It's faulty thinking. Now, one of my main sources back at the time when I was trying to discover all this, you know, because especially today it's even more confusing. Everybody's the expert on nutrition, you know. But here's the real guy. You know, this is your starting point. This is where you want to start out, Weston A. Price. Here are some of the places that he went and spent time with. He lived in these places. He didn't just visit them for the weekend. You know, it took him 3 years to do all this. And what did he find? What did they have in common? One thing they had in common is they were all sequestered from the rest of the world. Whenever I say that, I always remember one morning about 5 years ago, I had to fly one morning from Zurich to Florence, right? And it was a beautiful sunny morning, so we're flying across the Swiss Alps there. And, you know, some of the Swiss Alps are freaking 25,000 feet, you know, and the airplanes are flying like 30,000 feet. So, like, you look down there and they're right there, you know. You see the long valleys in between the Alps, and you realize that, and you see these little bright, crystalline, sparkling little villages in the white snow, and then you'll see a mountain, and then you'll see the next one, and you realize there weren't any roads that went across the 25,000-foot mountains. You know what I'm saying? It was like really isolated and sequestered. So that idea is pervasive throughout Weston A. Price's book, that the healthiest people on earth, they lived in locations that were physically cut off from the rest of the world. He called it cut off from the foods of commerce. Their foods and their diet came from their own immediate environment. Fiji Eskimos, Seminole Indians, Canadian Indians, Scottish Primitives, Melanesian, Hawaii were some of the places that he went, right? Okay, so now I'm going to give you the 4 categories of foods for the New West diet in a second here, but if you forget it, the short version, really easy to remember. For 60 days, we're going to be no refined carbohydrates. That means no white sugar, no white flour. Number 2, No pasteurized dairy for 60 days. No milk, cheese, butter, ice cream, yogurt if it's pasteurized. Number 3, no hydrogenated oils, okay? Which means we're going to do this too. You're going to have to read the labels of any packaged foods you eat. I divide food into 4 categories. Here they are. 4 categories for the 60-day program, right? Category 1, unrestricted. You can eat as much as you want. Unrestricted, with some moderation, rarely, and non-nutritive reactive foods. Okay, now in the 60-day program, we can only eat from category 1 and 2. This we don't eat from for 60 days.